De-escalation training. The purpose of this training is to provide tools to use when a student is escalating in order to prevent a crisis situation. Professionalism. How can one's level of professionalism impact their ability to work with a student in crisis? Some professional considerations when working with high-risk students are attire and appearance. How safe is your attire and how will your appearance impact the students you work with? Physical agility. Can you quickly move away from a potentially assaultive situation with ease and confidence? Are you aware of your physical abilities and limitations? Self-control plan. Have you developed a series of pre-planned techniques for maintaining or regaining self-control during a difficult interaction or situation? Self-care. Are you physically and emotionally in a space to cope with the situation? If not, do you have a supportive system or backup in place? Are you communicating your needs? Self-restoration. What methods have you developed for restoring your psychological and emotional well-being following a stressful or assaultive incident? Please scale your level of preparedness prior to this training, 1 being not prepared and 10 where you're feeling very prepared. De-escalation for students with special needs. Knowledge is your best tool for de-escalation. When working with a student with special needs, it's important to get to know that student better. So that means building a relationship with them and understanding them as a whole being, also understanding their IEP, meeting the paperwork helps to build a framework of understanding and the potential to develop expectations and a chance to build any potential strategies. So one thing you can do is to look at the website, and there's a link to it, nichcy.org, and you can look up any disabilities of children and maybe come up with a plan and strategies for helping them in a crisis situation. Resources for students. Once you have understanding of the manifestations of a disability, then we can dig deeper into seeing our students as individuals. Acting out behaviors in all students. The common knowledge model identifies 4 common motives for acting out. One is fear, second is frustration, third is manipulation, and the fourth is intimidation. Fear. When students or people in general are afraid or they feel their safety is threatened, their behavior may escalate to acting out as a means of defending themselves. Frustration. People act out when they feel they're losing control of their current situation. Manipulation. Students or people may act out and try and manipulate when they strongly desire something and or do not want to do something. The final one is intimidation. Students will try and use intimidation when they want to control a situation. So if you are encountering a student who is acting out because they are frustrated, staff should demonstrate control with a more commanding posture, use forceful gestures such as pointing, staying directly in front of the person, but just out of reach, keeping the tone of voice quiet, yet forceful and confident, and repeating commands. How to respond if a student is acting out of fear. Staff can respond to a student with a relaxed posture, use slow and natural gestures, keep a safe distance from student, stand off to the side, position oneself below the student's eye level, using a firm yet reassuring voice, stay logical, and encourage calm reflection. If a student is acting out, possibly due to manipulation, staff can maintain a closed yet relaxed posture, mild gestures of disapproval, positioning far enough away from the student, using a detached, slightly bored tone of voice, and quiet, repetitive commands. And finally, if a student is acting out because they are trying to intimidate, staff should identify consequences, use clear communication of the consequences of their current behavior, Staff should be poised and ready to react without giving the impression of fear. Keep gestures to a minimum, position oneself for protection, maintain a monotone, emotionless tone of voice, and continue to give clear and directive statements of consequence. The stress model identifies distinctive phases that individuals experience when under extreme stress. The first phase is the trigger. That is when an event that exceeds the student's tolerance for stress presents itself. The second is escalation. This is where we start to see increasing levels of agitation or changes in their baseline behavior. It's at this stage that intervention is needed. Crisis mode, you may see students act out in an aggressive or physical manner. At this stage, you're seeking assistance, you're notifying other departments, and you're also potentially removing the student who may get hurt, or calling the police, or possibly the principal or other administrative team members to support you. Recovery. At this point, the crisis is over. The student has calmed down and some action was taken. Post-crisis depression. This is where the student may fall below baseline levels. They may be very withdrawn. They may be quiet. The next model is the environmental model. The environmental model takes into consideration things such as weather conditions, sounds, crowds, scheduling events that can predispose people to act out. Being proactive and planning appropriately can minimize possible acting out behaviors. It's helpful to know which students respond very strongly to changes in sound or weather conditions, and to maybe understand their triggers and then make a plan for them, and that could minimize potential risky behaviors or situations. Basic needs model. According to this model, people act out when they feel that their basic needs are not taken care of. Take a minute to think about where many of your students may be on this Maslow's hierarchy of needs. The first, most basic need is our physiological need. The next is safety. The next is love and belonging. The next is esteem. And the next and final one is self-actualization. So if we were to look at our students who do act out, we might find that many of them fall on the bottom two levels of need, meaning that they're still trying to get their most basic needs met, and they may be dealing with some stressors at home or in their communities that make them more predisposed to acting out. The communication model. The manner in which we communicate with others has a direct relationship to their response to us. Assertive communication with others has three important components. The first is empathy and validation. The second is statement of problem. And finally, a statement of what you want. This is called the positive communication sandwich, and it's a way to help you remember assertive communication. So the top is always, you start off with a positive statement. In the middle, you can use an I statement, which says, when I see this behavior or when this happens, I feel blank. And you always end with, in the future, can we try to? So making a plan and ending your sentence or your conversation with a plan with a student is often very helpful. At this point, we'd like you to scale your level of preparedness now that we are at the end of our training. 1, once again, being not prepared, and 10 being very prepared.